Hello everyone, good to have you here. Welcome to today's Docs 42 class. It's about the group calculator. So on how you can enrich your data, how you can create calculations like sum, average, groups, row count. And we're also going to have a look into minimum and maximum calculations. We will start shortly, it's not true anymore, as we are starting at the moment. Yeah, so what I've prepared for today, let me just share my screen really quick with you, is so first let's have a look on the base of the data that we want to integrate. While this is opening, of course, on the left hand side I'll have a look on my screen where I can see your questions. So in case there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And in case if I look on the left hand side, it's not because I look somewhere else, it's just because I look at the questions. All right, back to the data. So in here we have some shows. So we will have tickets for shows. And what we'd like to do is we want to have like a nice automation of a table where there's going to be one table for the Lord of the Rings and another one for Harry Potter with the prices, with the names, and all of this should be, of course, within one automation. Of course, we could all do separate manual tables, but just think about having like a list of more than 3, 4, 5 different shows where all of this is going to be an automation. This, of course, needs to be done then automatically. We will show you today how you do that with groupings, with sums, with all of this. And what we will achieve eventually is the following document. We'll get there step by step, of course. So in those of you that are already using Docs42 know this is the Docs42 add-in. And if we click on generate on top, this will allow me to generate a document. And as you see, based on this one line we have here, we'll output 2 different tables, one being Lord of the Rings, one being Harry Potter, with the names, with some calculations. We'll also have a look into row and count, so you'll see what that is. Let's get started. So the 2 things that I've prepared just for the beginning is already the data structure that I've already shown you and a Word document, which we call ticket summary, which doesn't have any connection to Docs42 yet. And there are no data fields yet. There's just a very, very simple table. And the first thing we are going to do, of course, we need the data. So we are going to integrate into our data map right here with an Excel data source. And in that Excel data source, we are going to pick from the folder here. And of course, we're always going to make this dynamic. We're going to work with the doc path, which looks for the Excel sheet in the same document, in the same folder as the Word document. And we are going to read some data in here. Those of you who wonder what this is about, we had the Excel class last week. So this would be the place to go if you want to know what this is about. Now, let's just take any of these. We don't need to take all of them because in Docs42 you always have the option to read until the first empty cell if it's within Excel. And of course, the others read as much data as there is. Let's click on OK. And we want to call this tickets. So there we are with our first step with saving the data map as well. So we want to call this ticket map. And that is linked. Now the next step we are going to do is we're going to integrate some data in here. So we will have the ticket ID. We will have the show name first. So remember in the document I showed you before, in the beginning up top, we already had the show name. In this case, for the first step, we're just going to do it in a repetition. Then of course there is the person and there is the price for this. And we are going to do a repetition. So let's click on automate range. And we want to repeat this for our tickets. So all the tickets will be included. As always, you can test this. Just click on generate on top and you will have a list of all the information we need for that document. The price we want to format as well as a number. So let's just quickly define this as a number, and we want to add euro in here. Okay, those of you who are familiar with Excel will very easily do anything with the format strings. And let's click on Excel, and now we see there is the price right here. The next step that I want to show you is what options do we have within our group calculator. And the group calculator is something you can find in the Docs42 data map. So in here you will see there is the group calculator, and there are different functions. Basically the functions we had in the name of the Docs42 class for today. So there's the sum, the average, minimum, maximum, count, row, and of course there's start and end groups. We're starting from the beginning and kind of like moving down because the group is the most complex one. The sum is probably, and the average, min, max are probably the easiest. So let's take the sum for a calculation field, which is the price only. No grouping yet, we'll do that later on. Then let's do the same thing for the average, for the price. You see there are new fields that are created. Then let's again do it for the minimum of the prices. And last field will be the maximum, again, of course, of our prices. Sorry, wrong field, not a group, but a calculation. Maximum of the prices. So we have the sum, the average, the minimum, and the maximum here. Save our changes. All right, just checking if there are any questions in the meantime. All seems to be fine. That is good. Now, if we add a new line in there, and we want to start with min, max, average, and the sum will be below the prices, as it makes most sense there. Let's also include this as a number in here. Euro again. You can also add a culture if you want. I'm not going to do it today. And for the average and the rest, I will not do the non-datetime format. You can, well, it's the same thing as we were already done with the sums. So just do the same thing and you will be fine. Great. So we've now seen all of this. If we click on generate, we should be able to see that the minimum value of the prices is 25. That's correct. Then the maximum price, always correct, is the 30. We have an average. You can do the calculations. I did it before. It's true. And then, of course, there is the sum, which in our case is 60, 110, 135. So that is also true and works correct. Perfect. So we've done a list and we've done some very basic calculations with the beginning. The next step or the next level we are bringing this on is that in the moment we're still having the show as a part of the entire table. We want to bring that up. So what we are going to do is we will have a new row above, and we are going to do a repetition of all of this at the same time, because we always will want to have, let me just check if I still have the document open. Remember on this, we had the show on top, and then the tickets, and then the rest, and then the calculations. So we want to do the same thing. And in here, what we are going to do is we are going to merge those cells, and we are going to put the show up. Now, of course, I could have already deleted the show, but let's keep it for the maximum price. So this will just be max. Doesn't have any values in between, but it's just going to stick there for that purpose. Now, if we generate that document again, we will see that for the moment, it's still going to do the repetition of the header of the table, as well as the show for both tickets. We want to have that for those two tickets, as well as for Harry Potter in each. What we can work with for that is what we call the groups. So we want to include a group, and in this case, it's going to be before the actual repetition. It is going to be a start group. So if we go to the group calculator, define a starting group, and we want to group it by the show ID, then there's a field that we get. It's called start group per show ID. Let's click on OK. Before we go into implementing this into the document, let me just give you a quick background on what this actually does. If we have a look on our data, let me just open this one here directly. If we have a look on the tickets, so it seems I've just killed Excel. Let's just try from here again. Right. There it goes. Took a little time. Now there's all of them opening. Okay. Welcome to a live webinar. Now you have proved that it's actually live. Right. So back to the group and start group and end group of the logic behind this. Basically, what this will do is it will, as we've done the group per show ID, if this is a group, it will not do the repetition for the second item. In this case, it shouldn't do it for 3 and 4. And the very simple thing we basically calculate in the background in here is whether the first is, or whether any of these is the same as the one before. In this case, it is. So we will have an information saying this is different as the one before. Then this one is the same, so it's false. Then this one again is true. This one again is false and false. Which means that for a start group, so in this case it should be repeated, we will need a condition saying start group is true. Same for here. And again for all the others that are coming after. Now let's just switch back to our Word document. We've already done the start group per show ID, so we'll check that in show ID. Save the changes. We can do a dynamic field, sorry, automate range, of course, and we will check whether the start group per show ID equals true, as we said. Click on OK. Should be vice versa, because the condition is good, needs to be in the repetition. And if we now generate this, we should have Lord of the Rings and we have Harry Potter. Cool. Let's just do some quick design on this. This is not really about Docs42, but it's just it's for the eye. And what we will have in there is we want to have a color of this. We'll make it Docs42 green, and we will have white and a little bigger. Show names, then the ticket, the header should be something like, let's take light green, light gray in this case. Let's take this one just for the design purpose. And if we generate again, of course, it will also take the design in this case. And we are still missing the only thing, an empty line after what we've just achieved here. But this is something we will do in a second. What I'd like to do first with you is, at the moment you see that these are still connected, also not to the group, but they are connected to the entire data. So it will take the sum, for example, for all of them, same for average, same for maximum and minimum. And the second part we've also had a look on is row and count. What this does, let's just have a look first. So if we go to the data map, we want to insert something that we call row and count. And that's row. We don't need to do this for a group. We can do it for a group, of course. Let's just first do it not for a group, same for count. And let's include them above where we have a blank max. So this is going to be row and then count, which means in here we want to have first the row, then space another one, and then count. Click on generate. You'll see this is for 1 out of 5, 2 of 5, and so forth and so forth. Now, if we want to make this for the group, it's of course also something we can do. If we go to the data map and then go back to row, we can also group this for the show ID. So it will do the calculations for each group. Same thing also for the count. For the show ID, click on OK, close and save. Now we just need to replace those data fields, as now it's going to be per show ID and not just the general row. Generate, click on OK. And you see it's 1 out of 2, 2 out of 2, and then there's the same thing for 1 out of 3, 3 out of 3. Next step we want to include is the calculations. So the sum is not only going to be for the entire thing, but also there are calculations that are, for example, to the group. First thing we need to do is we need to make the group also for the sum. So let's take the sum price, and we want to make this for the group of the show ID. Now, of course, if I want to use the same thing, I could just call it the same as I have it, but I want to keep it per show ID. So I also later on in the data will be able to tell what's the group ID. So let's take the show ID here first. And if we include this as the sum and price per show ID, then, and also we are going to make the repetition one more line. So in the first step, what you will see is we will have too much sums. So this is the first sum for the group, and this is for the second group. So like the beginning with the start group, we want to now have the same thing for the end group. So basically, if you have a start on top, but then a end below, you will have that with the end group. Logically, the difference, so that is start group and that is end group. There is logically a difference between them, because in start you want to have this as in the beginning. With the end group, you want to have it at the very top, so it's basically vice versa. So what it does in this case, it's going to be false, true, false, false, true. You will always have it at the end. All right, let's create the group first. So we are going to create what we call the end group for our show IDs. Click on OK. Again, the same condition. And what we want to have is this entire part should only be displayed if our end group per show ID equals true. Click on OK. And let's try. Cool. There we are already. Now, if you want to include an additional line, what you can do, of course, is you can add a new line, put the end of the repetition into the next line, and this, for example, should have a layout where there are no borders. So let's go to borders and shading. We want to get rid of these, as there is going to be an empty cell here too, and we should get very close to what we already had. So I did this, of course. It's one thing I missed. We want to have, of course, both at the end of this, since there's the end of the repetition and also the end of the start group at the end group. So if we again do this, we will have the output of two different tables with two different headers of the shows. We will have the tickets for each show, and we'll also have a sums. Now these are still within the entire data, but same like we did with the sum, you can also do this for those groups, and then we'll have a nice output including the groups. One best practice hint that I have for you, in case your group is not sorted as it is in my data, of course you can also do the filter and sort, where you're going to do the show ID, which in our case is numeric, to be sorted descending or ascending. Descending. And you see, because I did it descending, it switched and had now the show number 2222 on top and 11 below. So that's going to sort whatever group you have, and you always need to have it sorted by the group. All right, so much for that scenario. What I'd also like to show you is, if you want to do this yourself, feel free to just do the demo I did today. If you want to see an example up front, there is what we call a ticket sample in one of our sample templates. So there is the event ticket, basically the same logic I just had, just a little more complex, and especially is visually much more appealing. And you can even do a filter in here. So those of you that are already familiar with the input parameters, of course, like today we did an entire integration on a data structure that had no filters. If you, for example, add any logic like a date, or also like we do here, like an invoice number, and an invoice number has then multiple tickets, then you could also have this as an input parameter that is going to do a filter where there are still groups in it, and that's just before that logic. Hope that makes sense to you. If not, you should definitely contact us. Let's take any of these, and we're getting to the same point where we have that person, where we have in our scenario a show also with an image. We will have, let's just view them side by side. So you see they're basically the same structure as we already had, and in this case it's going to integrate all of these. All right. Of course, in that data map, you would also be able to see those fields with the group calculations if you want to check those. And now would be the perfect time, as we are approaching the end of this session today, for you to ask some questions. Like I said, I have the question panel open on the left-hand side, so feel free to ask anything. All right, well, questions are coming. I'm just gonna do something very quick to show you where you can find out what's next in terms of Docs42 events. And if you check out our page on the event section, you'll see we'll have a next class about the Docs42 text block integration. We'll have a webinar around the QR code. We'll also have much more around Dynamics, SharePoint. You will find all of this here, so feel free to join this. In the meantime, I see that there are no questions, so it seems like we've covered all of them. If you get into any that you haven't been able to ask today, be sure to contact us directly. We're happy to answer them. We have our contact form on the homepage directly, so just go here. If you want to try this, be sure to check the free key here, click the name, insert the name, and you will get a free key. You can try this. You can try the sample template I've shown you. And as always, it was a pleasure. See you next time. Bye-bye.